Hey guys, or should I say Detroit in the world? It's Orlando, and I'm here to introduce a very special live episode of Authentically Detroit. As most of you already know, I had the opportunity to become a Marshall Memorial Fellow with the German Marshall Fund of the United States. This came after a nomination from a friend and mentor, Katie Locker, and after two amazing letters of recommendation written by Councilman Andre Spivey and Donna Givens, who of course is co-host of Authentically Detroit and my CEO. I and my friend and sister, Yodit Mesfin Johnson, who is the CEO of New Solutions for Nonprofits, by the way, were part of the fall 2019 delegation who got to travel abroad to Europe for almost a month as citizen diplomats to talk about transatlantic cooperation and engagement. We experienced so much, and we wanted to tell everyone about it in a real, open, and honest way. So, Authentically Detroit partnered with Urban Consulate, where I serve as the Detroit host, and Co.Act Detroit to bring you the Black all over the world Candid conversation. This dialogue was moderated by two esteemed Marshall Memorial alums, Kirk Mays, CEO of Forgotten Harvest, and our homie and friend to the show, Marlowe Stoudamire, who is the founder of Roster Detroit. Take a listen to this dialogue recorded on Wednesday evening, January 22nd, 2020, at Co.Act Detroit in the New Center neighborhood. Good evening and welcome to Urban Consulate, everybody. Give yourselves a hand for being here tonight. Thank you so much. Y'all did good. I'm Orlando Bailey. I am the host of Urban Consulate Detroit, and we are live here at Co.Act Detroit in the New Center area here in the city of Detroit. This is our first Candid conversation of 2020, and I'm excited to relinquish my role as host and moderator to Kirk Mays and Marlowe Stoudamire. Give them a hand. But before I do that, I want to make sure we acknowledge the founder of Urban Consulate, who couldn't be here tonight. Everybody give it up for Claire Nelson in her absence. We want to thank Alondra Bolger and the Co.Act team and the Authentically Detroit podcast, of which I am also host, so check it out, shameless plug, on wherever you stream your podcast on. And we want to thank all of you for partnering with us to bring tonight to life. We want you to take the conversation online, so if you got Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, you can hashtag Urban Consulate or at Urban Consulate on all of those platforms. Everybody here is full of like gems and quotes, so you may want to get your phones ready. And you can also hashtag Authentically Detroit or at Authentically Detroit. Also, thanks to Yum Village and the Vittles. Did y'all enjoy the food? Was it good? And Val Walker for capturing our beautiful photos tonight. And right now, I have the pleasure of introducing everyone up here today, but I'm going to keep it short because they can do a better job of introducing themselves. Better yet, some of these folks really don't need no introduction, if I'm being honest, because they are tried and true. But I would like to first introduce my co-feature, my MMF sister, the new CEO of New Solutions for Nonprofits, Yodit Mesfin Johnson. We also have Marshall Memorial Fellowship alum and CEO of Forgotten Harvest, the Kirk Mays, y'all. Kirk Mays is here. I don't know how we got these people to say yes, but they say yes. And we got another MMF alum moderating. He is the founder of Roster Detroit and does just about everything there is to be done in the city. His name is Marlowe Stoudamire. Give him a hand. And now I am elated to be in the hot seat along with Yodit and turn it over to Kirk and Marlowe. Y'all take it away. You got your mic. Oh,
all right, good evening. As Orlando mentioned, my name is Marlowe Stoudamire, MMF alum, as he mentioned, native Detroiter, father to Ian, Shelby, and Valencia, and just happy to be here. For me, the title of Black All Around the World is really special. One thing that was special for me, and I'll just hand it over to Kirk, and he'll break down to what MMF really is, Marshall Memorial Fellow, is that I was actually the first black male to be a Marshall Memorial Fellow in the summer. And then Kirk followed literally right after me. So this is kind of like a small, intimate fraternity But tonight I'm hoping that we can unpack Yodit and Orlando's experience because it's a lot to it other than just the travel. It's the personal journey to become a fellow, to be picked. It's preparing for the fellowship. It's getting there, finding yourself within the fellowship, navigating, being an American, not just a black person, but a black American in Europe, and then also trying to identify what actually you took away from the experience. And so from there, I'll let Kirk kind of level set you on the history behind it, what it's intended for, and then I think we'll jump right into the questions.
Yep. How you doing, everybody? Again, Kirk, we realize that you're here tonight to hear about the story and the adventure that Yodit and Orlando went on. So we just want to spend a little bit of time to ground everybody into like what this is and where did it come from. So the Marshall Memorial Fellowship is the what you call the Cadillac program of a organization called the German Marshall Fund. And the origins of the German Marshall Fund actually hails from right after World War II. General George C. Marshall actually did the commencement address for the immediate graduating class after the war was over of Harvard University. That speech was not only notable, it was something that rang, and in that time, right, in 1942, it was equivalent of going viral. Everybody was talking about it. It inspired not only the student body, but legislators to actually pick up that speech and look at the essence of it. And essentially what General Marshall was saying was, in order to prevent a World War III, just like what happened after World War I, and to prevent the animosity that comes from losing, and losing so definitively, it's probably best for the United States to take a position and the Allies to go in and actually help to be the reconstructors of Germany. And from that came what we call, what you might know as the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was the funding that actually helped to reconstruct Germany after World War II. And as a thank you, it was one of the fastest and most complete reconstructions after any war known in Western culture, at least. After that, as a thank you and an intentional effort to prevent one layer of an effort to prevent another world conflict, the German Marshall Fund was created with the intent of seeding and maintaining over time transatlantic relationships. And the methodology behind it, at least through the Marshall Memorial Fellowship, is to identify people who are already leading and making things happen in their communities in Europe and in America, and do a period of exchange where both sides get a chance to understand some of the basics of what make each of the countries and each of the regions what they are. Europe is not a country, as you all know. That's a whole nother thing to talk about with the EU and all of that. But, you know, all of this was essentially so that at a core, relationships, culture, and economics can begin to be seeded by relationships that are intentionally crossing the pond, so that we could have such a deep connection that a world war, again, just wouldn't make sense. So Orlando and Yodit's selection into this program not only signifies that the work that they're already doing is clearly putting them on a trajectory of leadership that has the kind of potential to impact our national picture. And as they grow into that and as they continue down this journey, this fellowship has now given them access to relationships that literally span the rest of the world. So congratulations and welcome to the crew.
Give them a round of applause. All right. So we're about to get right into it. This could probably be a 3 to 4 hour conversation, so we're going to have to be as succinct as possible, because what we want to do is also save time at the end for people to ask questions across the board, but primarily focus on Yodit and Orlando. So for me, I like to start with the first question. as if I don't know you, but I know you both well, based on what Kirk said and based on who you are as individuals, can you offer the audience some perspective of why you even wanted to go? Starting with you, Yodit, because ladies first.
Thanks, Marlowe. First, I want to thank Kirk and Marlowe, who both were tremendous supports in the process leading up to going. The program is well sought after by those of us who apply for it, highly regarded, and you get the sense as you're participating, even in the application process, that you are representing the city, the region, your constituents, et cetera. So, it felt like a huge responsibility, and when I reached out to say, how can I best show up for our city, they were at the ready to help. So thank you both. And I felt incredibly prepared going into the process as a result of how generous they were with their wisdom and advice. Why I was interested in contextually speaking, GMF just relaxed the age requirements, so I think an important part of my story is to say to you, I really lusted after the program, knowing that Marlowe and Kirk had gone for many years before I was ever accepted into the program. They recently relaxed the age requirement. I'm over 40, and so I was able to participate. Previously, only folks under 40. So I have FOMO, y'all, like a mug when Marlowe...
28 to 40, actually.
Yeah.
It was
28 to 40 years old, so thank you. So I had FOMO, fear of missing out, right? When Marlowe and Kirk went and kind of watched, their journeys online, really manifesting. So there's a point to you all about the things that you're hungry for and that you want, that you have a responsibility in manifesting that. That said, my work is around the intersections of doing good and changing the world, right? Like the intersection of nonprofits, social change, trying to get to equitable outcomes, and more recently in the last 5 or 6 years, my work has delved more deeply into the role of racial inequity and injustice and how that takes shape in the social sector broadly, right? So I'm curious always about what it looks like to move from a myopic and narrow view of race in the context of how we understand it here in the U.S. to a global perspective around race. So part of my application was saying, I want to go explore and ultimately create a global network of leaders of color who are working at the front lines of the kinds of change that we want, because oftentimes we are not in the front of that work. The other piece was, I've worked in the social sector now for nearly 20 years, and when you think about last year, $420 billion went into the charitable sector, but the federal poverty index level hasn't changed in 50 years. Right? So the same percentage, roughly 11% of folks, and it varies in whatever region of the country you're in, but nationally that number hasn't changed. So we know that money alone doesn't solve these complex issues. And so I was curious about what were nonprofits, NGOs, governments, institutions, foundations all over the globe doing that actually led to material change in the outcomes of people. So that's what took me on the trip.
Orlando?
It's always fun following your deep. You can never follow her like, you set me up, Marlowe. Contextually, I heard about the German Marshall Fund and the Marshall Memorial Fellowship when I was about 24, 25. I started my career here in the city of Detroit pretty young, fresh out of college, 22 years old. And at the time, nobody under the age of 28 could apply. And so it had sort of been teased to me by a board member and Katie Locker, who was over the Knight Foundation Detroit office at the time, but I could not apply. So all of these years of curiosity just sort of, began to build up, and I was nominated 2 years ago, and I applied. Part of the reason why I applied, along some of the same lines that Yodit spoke of, but I really wanted to explore intention around policy and how policy is created and the attention of it and how it shows up in neighborhoods, right? Because in Detroit and in the work that I do, we have a lot of people with great intentions who are making decisions on behalf of community. And when you ask community about those policy decisions, the effect doesn't match the intention. And I wanted to explore that globally. I knew that German Marshall Fund would give me access to a lot of power, a lot of people in power who make those decisions, and I really wanted to hear that perspective, as well as design an experience for myself in my individual appointments with folks like me doing the same kind of work that I do here in the city of Detroit. So I was nominated a couple of years ago. I didn't get it. And so to answer Marlowe's question, I didn't want to go after I didn't get it. I was mad. I'm like, I don't, you know. But I thank God for like mentors and people in your life who continue to encourage you and say, no, you got it. We're gonna try this again. And the second time was a charm, and I actually got it. And I took the opportunity, the interview process, all of that very, very seriously. And I got it, and I went. And one of the first things, one of the first moments that I had when I found out that I won, not that I won, but that I got the fellowship, is that Yodit got it too. And I had known Yodit years prior, love for each other. We would see each other. We've moderated conversations together. She's moderated panels, I've moderated panels, but we hadn't really had the opportunity to connect on a personal level. So I was just super excited, not only that I got to go, but that I would get to go on this learning experience with someone that I had been wanting to learn so much more from. So that's why I wanted to go, Marlowe. Good question.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Kirk?
So, you know, before we get deep into the experience that you went through, let me ask this question to both of you, of course. You know, one of the things that nobody gives you a heads up about, really, and one of the things that you really probably don't even consider when you're anticipating what you're looking forward to when you know that you're about to go, is the fact that there are a number of people in other cities across this country who just got the same letter to go. And you get to Washington, D.C. as the first leg of your trip. And I know for me, when I got to D.C., I met a bunch of people that I had no idea was about to be my friends for the rest of my life. Because you're about to go through an experience that's like boot camp in the Army, or like going to college, or like whatever you ever been through that after you got through it, it changed your life. I'm telling you, whoever was there with you are going to be some people that's going to be a part of the marker when that thing changed in your life. And you don't realize that until you go through it. And then when you step back and look at who the program produces to be your colleagues, it's like, whoa, these are some fantastic people doing some miraculous things all across the country. So tell us about who your new friends are. Where they come from? Who are some of the people that did? Not, you ain't got to go through the whole list, but, you know, tell us about some of the outstanding individuals that stood out to you through this experience that are U.S. side people who are part of your cohort in this fellowship. Your colleagues, your equals.
Right, that's funny. I'm glad you said that. Your equals.
Well, first of all, Orlando Bailey.
Yay, yay.
It was, you know, you are leaving your anchor space to go for nearly a month to a place in this case, I'd never been to Europe before, so to a place unknown. So the familiarity of having Orlando as part of the experience, just baseline, was really powerful. The opportunity to see something new, right, together, to have those awarenesses and epiphanies together was also, I think, fortified our relationship. And I'm at a point in my career where you're really looking at how do I reach back and make sure that there are folks who are coming forward as we matriculate through. And he is, bar none, the up and coming. Not only is he a leader, an established leader, but he really is our future. And so it was an honor to be with him. In terms of, so I arrive in DC, look around the room, and I'll be honest, I had like imposter syndrome. Have you ever done that moment where you like, hold up, who cheated the system?
Why am I here?
How did I get in this room? So senators, Congress folk, members of parliament in Europe, heads of healthcare tech firms, a high-ranking official in ExxonMobil, someone who was elected to Congress on the Saturday that we arrived on the trip, right? You want to jump in there?
Yeah, so our boy, he's our friend now, Jason Hughes.
From NOLA.
from New Orleans, was running for a state rep. And
no, for congressman. That's different.
No, he's state.
Okay.
State rep.
Okay.
He was running for state rep in Louisiana.
That's right. House
and he left, and in the middle of his campaign, he was like, "Yo," so we got to DC, and he was, super quiet and very measured.
Very reserved.
And so I started, just me, I'm asking all the questions, and he's like, "Yeah, so I'm actually up for election for state rep." I said, "Well, when does the election take place?" And he's like, "Saturday." And I said, "So you're gonna be here while the election is taking place?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so he was very present, but you can also tell that, like, man, I got an election coming up on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And we were together Saturday when he won.
Yes.
He won that election.
Yeah.
And to experience that with him.
The second youngest African American in
Louisiana, cemented.
Yeah.
So if they went to Louisiana this weekend, guess who they get to hang out with?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, first call, what up? We here.
What up, though, you Louisiana?
Right.
But see, that's something we're going to get into later.
Yeah.
Going through a program like this, literally, you could blindfold yourself, get dropped off in any part of Europe, and you can make a fall, and you got people.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Can I unpack something that you said, Yodit, that was like super dope, and it builds off what Kirk said. He said when you got to DC and you got to the room full of your equals, right? And I in no way, shape, or form felt equal to anybody else in the room. I'm this black kid from the east side of Detroit. Diplomacy, what? We scrap on the east side, right? And so I get there, and I don't, you may remember this, I didn't take a seat at the table. I yielded my seat to the ladies that were in the room, and I sat away from the table so that I can sort of get the lay of the land, right? And this imposter began screaming, like, "What are you doing here?" When everybody went around the table and announced who they were and their affiliations, and I'm like, "I'm Orlando, I work for a nonprofit in Detroit." I was having this moment, this internal battle, and it had to be the voice of Kirk, said to me, "You belong here." And I wrote it down in my moleskin notepad. Like, I belong here. You belong in every space that you occupy. And I could talk to anybody after that. I could talk to state reps, senators, members of parliament. Yo, what's up? And we did. We did. Yeah.
So you know what's interesting about that? I think that's a theme that we all shared. And again, one of the things we talked about, black all over the world, as young black professionals, the mental gymnastics that we have to deal with and go through every day, whether it be in corporate America, being told growing up, you have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard, you'll never be good enough, like all of these things. Somebody told me when I was a kid, the only way you'll see the world is if you join the military. So the psyche that you are bringing to the table when you sit down, even when you are enough, the imposter syndrome is a real thing. But one of the things I wanted to do was pivot really quickly to give some context. So what I want you to do is frame out the moment you found out what countries you were going to. That's number one. Number two, what's the first thing that you did after you found that out in terms of preparation? And then the last part of this question, just take us through the sequence, is when you thought about the fact that you had to set up your own meetings in certain situations, give people insight, because I will tell you, when Kirk and I went, this was a while ago, setting up those meetings, oh my God. It ain't a part of the program, and you have to do it on your own. And talk about that.
Just to add, make sure you tell us about what those meetings were.
Right, so it's the first thing Orlando just asked is the countries that you got, right? How did you feel? What was your reaction? What did you do to prepare? And then talk about having to set up your own meetings on the other side of the world with no help.
So while you guys think about that, let me give everybody context. So you get a letter that says you're in. And then you're like, all right, bet, what do I do? And then they send you like this agenda for the trip, which you would expect, right? You'd expect to have this thing like laid out what I'm gonna do. What you may not expect is this agenda is like 150 pages.
It's a book.
And you need the whole thing. Now, a part of what has been sold to you is that you're going to have in this experience a one-on-one meeting with essentially anybody you want. That's the kind of weight you come with in the country. I know one of my partners, when we got to Belgium, he was like, I want to meet the mayor. And they was like, let's make it happen. Now, this is the catch. When they tell you that, what they don't tell you is, while you in America, you are responsible to set that meeting up yourself. No help.
All the way across the world.
Now, so if you want a meeting with the mayor, you have to call the Belgian mayor's office from the United States and come with your, hey, my name is such and such. I am a new Marshall Memorial Fellow, and you better hope that gets you past the front door. Sure. Other than that, you got to use game. And you really got to, the first step is anybody you want.
Anybody.
Yeah.
So how did y'all figure that part out?
Yeah, I mean, so a little bit more. So you get this notification that you're in, and they say, and then now you're going to do 6 months of distance learning, which is essentially grounding you in what do we mean when we talk about transatlantic cooperation? What is diplomacy? What are we talking about? What are the hot foreign policy issues? So you're doing that by webinar for months leading up to this. And then within a month of the trip, you get the book agenda, right?
So me and Marlowe didn't get that.
Okay.
We had to go ruggish thuggish and figure that out.
Well, they still didn't help us necessarily introduce
And remember,
us to
we didn't
anybody.
hear from. We got the letter, and then
You heard
we
nothing.
We heard nothing for
Right.
months. Yeah.
In fact, I wonder if Sean Gray, because I was in Katie, I started like dropping in people's DMs. You know anything? Are we gonna have a meeting? So you get this notice. There's all this anticipation, and maybe a couple other things. So you either are nominated, which is the ideal way, or they do have a self-nomination process, but it's incredibly rigorous. So first you do the online piece, letters of recommendation, et cetera. Then you go before a 9-person interview panel, which I did here in Detroit and others did in Miami, right? Most of y'all know me, I had 27 minutes to answer 9 questions. Okay, that was, and literally at the 27th minute, thank you, we'll talk to you soon.
You were prepared, though.
Well, I might have went over a little bit, but I left like, ooh, I forgot to ask. I mean, I literally didn't even ask what's next because I was trying to answer the questions thoroughly. So I didn't know what was next, and that was a missed opportunity. So if any of you apply, really think about those succinct responses and be prepared when you go into that interview. So then you wait and you find out you're notified. Then they say on this date, regardless of what you're doing, be on this webinar. And you have 3 or 4 of them that you must attend if you plan to go with us. So then they send you the 100-page agenda, and then they say, and we got it in steps. So it was first like, here's all the people you're with. That's when you clutch your pearls, like, ooh, and you start thinking, who am I gonna like? Who am I not gonna like? Am I gonna have to sleep in a room with them, or am I gonna, in the meantime, I think something else for those of us who are of age is trying to think through, like, what I'm gonna do with my baby for a month, right? And we can talk about that kind of stuff a little bit later, but you've got all of that in place, right? How am I gonna make sure work is covered? How am I gonna make sure the dog gets fed and the house is taken care of and somebody got my baby? And so, and they were very strict. You are not to bring your children as part of the program. There were other things like, how do I deal with, health care, or this, that, and the third. Luggage, you get, you really only take a piece of luggage for a 30-day trip. Come on, y'all.
You're washing your drawers in the sink, basically.
I didn't do that.
had she went against everything they advised us to do.
No drawers in no sink.
She had 2 very large suitcases.
I absolutely did.
So look, real quick though, because I want to make sure we can get to the meat. Tell them the countries that you were selected for.
So then I find out that everybody's going to Brussels, then I'm going to Hamburg, Germany, then I'm going to Athens, Greece, and then I'm going to Bratislava, which is in Slovakia, separated from the Czech Republic, and then I'm ending my trip in France, in Paris.
Same. Mostly. We started in D.C., went to Brussels, which is the European base for GMF, and it's also the home of NATO and
It's the
EU,
capital of the EU.
and it's the capital of the EU. And then from there, I went to Lübeck, Germany, and I went on to Bilbao, Spain, and then we went to Bratislava, Slovakia. I was on that trip with Yodit. In fact, it was crazy. All the black folk in the cohort were in Bratislava, so we started calling it Blackislava. And we were the only black people in Bratislava at the time. We'll talk about that. And then we finished up in Paris, France. Yeah.
And the locations are wildly different depending on what cohort you in, what year you go. Marlowe, just tell your countries.
Yeah, so I started off in D.C. I went to Brussels. Actually, when I launched MASH Detroit, it was inspired by something I saw in Brussels in one of my private appointments, and in the hood in Brussels, by the way. Left Brussels, then I went to Berlin. Left Berlin, then I went to Greece, Thessaloniki, during the time where the Golden Dawn white supremacists were taking over. It was very scary. Left there, then went to Podgorica, Montenegro, and then we finished in Warsaw, Poland, where I had a full deep dive experience with the aftermath years later of the Holocaust and the war with Germany and Hitler. And so it was mind-blowing. Where'd you go, Kirk?
One, I went during the Obama government shutdown. So there was a whole situation with the conversations. And by the time we got to Germany, Angela Merkel had just found out that her phone was getting tapped by the U.S. So, and we were supposed to meet with her, and we actually met with her campaign manager. She had just won the re-election. So it was a little icy when we first got there. But we went to Belgium to start. I think I went to Copenhagen next, and Denmark, and then Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I went to I went to Lisbon, Portugal, and then we ended up in Berlin as our last place. Yeah.
All right, Kirk, next question.
I thought I just did the last question.
Oh, okay, well, I'll jump back in. So listen. Now, what we want to do is, now we talked about a little bit where you started, right? So you are still in D.C., which is pretty comfortable. Now you're getting on the flights. You arrive in Brussels. The thing about Brussels that's different than any other country is because, and I'm not sure, I want you guys to tell us, but we went and we sat at the table across generals at NATO. We went to the EU. You know how on TV, where they have the people with the different microphones and everybody speaking different languages, and you in that big room, we were there, right? So there's pictures there. We met with ambassadors and whatnot. Actually, when I was there, it was the 4th of July, and we actually went to an ambassador's house, and we were talking to guys, and we were sitting with them, and they were talking about how some of the diplomats and ambassadors were being targeted for assassination. And I'm sitting next to this dude at dinner like, wait, I'm moving over, right? So really unpack Belgium and Brussels, because to me, that's probably the first moment where it really smacks you in the face when you're in Europe, right? That's your first exposure, and they take you deep. Talk about that a little bit, starting with you, Yodit.
Yeah, so I'm going to break the rules and stay in D.C. because I think, the impetus for this talk, beyond just sharing with you where we went and the logistics, was really talk about identity and how that took shape for us. So these days, I'm conscious in every room I'm in of who's there and who is not. I no longer will speak on a panel if there is not more than just myself as a person of color. I'm very selective about what rooms I'm in. So I noticed when I was there in Brussels, much to my surprise, that the majority of our U.S. cohort were people of color. That was great. I also noticed immediately that the majority of the European cohort, and you might expect that this would be the case, but it was such a stark contrast that 90% of the European fellows were not only white, but male. So if you think about two groups of people coming together, right, that don't really know each other, and that context, it was noticeable. So much so that when I was asked what my impressions of the 2 days in D.C. were, I lifted up that it really stood out to me, and that was problematic.
They asked us what outraged us.
What outraged us? Yeah, so I'm gonna be outraged wherever I am. I don't really care what the name of your program is. If there is a whole cohort of people that are homogenous, that's problematic for me. And so I was encouraged and urged, since they didn't kick me out, because I thought they were. The man was so mad at me, like, the nerve of you to ask. And I was like, I'm just, you just asked me. Kevin, yeah. And I'll tell you later, if we have time, why that mattered. But just hold that with me for a minute, okay? Because then, so we get to know each other. What is the question?
Brussels.
So we get to know each other a little bit in D.C., and then we go to Brussels. And that's after, so you take an international flight at the crack of dawn, 7 hours. We land in Brussels. The picture that you see where Orlando is bent over is he's asleep. And half the cohort was asleep because we had not had, they want you to adjust. So we go and get food, and then the very next thing that they do with a group of, there were 18 of us, and how many?
Three coordinators.
And 3 coordinators, and the majority of us were people of color, and we go on a walking tour of colonial Belgium, which begins by, it begins at, that's the statue, with us diving into King Leopold's terrorism in the Democratic Republic of Congo, right? And we learn the statue of public art that you see is the rubber bullets that he used when he didn't cut off the hands of the people he was, who were fighting and rebelling against his colonial efforts in the DRC. They used these rubber bullets to sort of keep them in line. The irony is they're using the same rubber bullets in Paris, and we'll talk about that in the Yellow Vest movement. So I am sickened. I don't think it's cute. I'm not impressed. I'm exhausted. I've flown across the country, and it feels tone deaf to me that you take a majority of people of color on a tour. So that's what I'm holding day one, okay? So that was just there for me. The experience at NATO, which I want Orlando to tell you about, is one that I don't think we as Americans in our nationalism truly understand our connection to and participation in a global network, in particular a European network that affords us some of the very securities that we often take for granted. So I want you to share that part of the story.
Yeah, so second day in Brussels, we are walking into NATO, and before we even get in the building, this is still like, it does something to me. There is a steel beam from the World Trade Center bombings from September 11, 2001, and Yodit and I happened to be walking together, and we both stopped. Like, it stopped us in our tracks, and we looked at each other, and we were both just like a mess, like tears. And it was a defining moment for me because I never felt so American in America the way that I felt standing outside of NATO. Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization means that the allies within NATO are going to war. And after September 11th, the first time Article 5 was invoked was on our behalf. And so that's the first thing we see when we walk in. And so we went in NATO messed up already. It's like, I don't know how we're going to pull it together because everyone remembers that experience. Everyone remembers the fear. I remember being in school and our parents taking us out. We didn't know what was going to happen. And it had implications, little did I know, at 13, 14 years old, around the world. And it was super emotional. It was humbling. We weren't just black at that moment. We were just fully American and feeling it. And the grief, too, that we were able to experience. We went to Flanders when we were in Belgium and saw the World War I memorial and realized how insulated we can be as Americans in terms, number one, of knowing our history, and then number two, recognizing the life sacrifices that happened so that we can enjoy the liberties that we enjoy today. History is very much alive over there. We hardly fight wars on American soil, so we don't have that kind of connection. But it was humbling, and it was grievous.
Yeah, the impact of war is palpable still. You feel it. You
see it.
feel and see. I mean, when he said, we've visited 6 war memorials in total while we were in Europe. In fact, frankly, from a cultural perspective, like walking around in graveyards is not something is not a cultural norm for me. It is a heavy, reverent time when you're there, and it is overwhelming and awestruck. You are awestruck by I mean, a couple stories, like the average age is like 18, 19 years old. So you got to think about, we put our babies as pawns, really, in a war, and then they died, right? I mean, the youngest grave marker was a kid that was 15 years old. He was 15 years old.
Crazy.
There was something else you said that before Flanders, you were talking about NATO. So something else that I think is important that you all would appreciate is about values. So the Article 5 getting evoked is about a value system, a set of core values that NATO has established over 70 years that guide every decision, right? So that Article 5 is like, if one of us go down, we all go down, right? And when you talk about the palpable feeling of the impact of war, I had never and have never in this country, we talk about life, liberty, the pursuit of justice, happiness as core and central tenets of our country, and yet, by and large, we live contradictory to those values. And in every country I was in Europe, whether a young democracy or an established democracy, you saw fidelity to their values. Even in the case of Germany, where such egregious harm had been done, those gold blocks that you see are actually gold stumbling blocks on the streets in Germany that acknowledge, so you never forget. They're called stumbling blocks, so you never forget. They have the names of Holocaust victims on them. Germans don't fly their flag because they don't want to propagate nationalism, right? They are very humble. So I just wanted to lift up the spirit. We've been waiting. I have been waiting as a person of color in this country for truth and reconciliation, and I saw that in Germany in practice.
So that's powerful, and it reminds me of. So this is a question, right? So what you're talking about reminds me of certain moments that happened while I was there for me. And those moments added up to me changing.
Yeah.
And I want you to speak to that in more depth as far as some specific moments. I can tell you for me, there was a couple things that changed me when you add them all together. One of the places we went to when we were in Belgium was a place called Bruges.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bruges is a very, very old town, has deep, deep roots in history, some old churches that are there that actually have historical relevance in the Bible and everything, right? So we're listening to somebody tell a story about something in front of a church that was 800 years old. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was working in Brightmoor. And if you looked at the community of Bruges, my question was, if this town is so old, why does it still look so good? And you know the answer they told me? They said, well, because people are poor here and they really don't have anything and they know they probably won't have anything in the future, they've taken care of this. And I was like, ain't that I'm coming from a whole different situation. And then I touched that building and I realized I live in a house in Detroit that's considered historic, that was built in 1927. We got a completely different appreciation for time, and this building is 4 times the age of our country. So that changed me. Going into a cafe when I was hungry one day, walking back independent from the group with no cash on me except a $20 US dollar, a $20 US bill. And I walked in there, I grabbed all my stuff, I got all the way to the cash register, I put that $20 thing on there, and he laughed. He was like, no, we don't take that. I'm like, what do you take? He was like, euros or credit card? So for the first time in my life, I was exposed to the reality that the US dollar was absolutely not the most coveted and the most powerful currency in the world, because they didn't even want to touch it. It was like walking around with old Canadian money. Nah, you know what I'm talking about. And the last piece I would say for me would be Germany. And I would say that my depiction of what I saw the same thing that Yodit saw in what you were saying is humility. I asked very direct questions about this humility. And what was revealed to me is this guilt. Yeah, for sure. They still have a deep-seated guilt in Germany about what they did to other people and the whole result of World War II.
And shame.
Yeah, the whole thing. So I'm going to tell you what that experience was for me. So in a closed session, I asked the question, this was my last place too. We've been through all of Europe, and we've been hearing about the potential of the destabilization of the EU and the shakiness of England, always threatening they're going to leave out. We know they're never going to leave, but, well, see, that would happen there, But everybody's saying everywhere that the strongest economy truly is the German economy. And really, they need you to step up and lead. Why doesn't Germany lead the EU the way it needs to? And the answer that was given back to me was, the word for leader in Germany is Führer. And I was like, well, damn, we American, change the word. Change the word, come up with a different word. But I was joking and being tongue-in-cheek facetiously, literally, but it was starkly apparent that they are not over it. And the fact that they actually have allowed themselves, and I think that that's what's fair for you to kind of characterize it as humility. They've allowed themselves to kind of stew in this shame, this guilt, to not allow their generations to come to actually make the same mistakes of allowing, in some ways, what truly is a German edge, I'll call it, to get them back into a place where their egos or their nationalism of being a Deutschland would actually put them back in the position that they could potentially find themselves in an unfavorable light again in world leadership.
And they were very candid.
Yeah,
they were very candid about their history, and you get a sense that they've been through and are going through a reckoning that America hasn't gone through yet. My moment in Germany really was profound for me, and it changed me. Talk about being black all over the world. I was talking with a professor of American history who was full-blown German, but he taught American history at one of the local colleges there. And I asked him, I said, so what is your favorite piece of American history to teach? And it was as if he had been waiting to converse with a black American about this subject. And so he never answered my question. And he said, and I'm going to quote him verbatim, he said, Orlando, I got to tell you this. He said, I cannot for the life of me understand why black people hasn't taken over that shit across the pond. He said the level of oppression, the compounding oppression that your people have experienced, I don't understand why y'all haven't taken up arms. And he went on to say, and this is what got me, he said, the world, we, people all over the world have learned from your people's activism. People have learned how to disobey civilly. People have learned how to agitate. People have learned how to protest from black people in America. And that was the statement that I didn't know I needed to hear from a white man all the way in Germany who taught American history. And I'd never been so proud of my ancestors.
So much more, and I don't want to take too much. Maybe you can. Also in Bratislava, where we've already said to you that we're like our six.
It's a homogenous culture. They weren't welcome to immigrants, right? They had their doors shut, but they had a struggling economy, so they need folks to come in and do work in this dying automotive industry that we told them, look, y'all need to diversify economy and do it quick. We know about automotive in Detroit. And we are coming into our hotel.
We had this big, beautiful hotel in
Yeah.
this little corner of the world. That,
Right.
I never even heard. I couldn't even say Bratislava.
Right.
Right.
Coming in the
walk in the
hotel,
lobby.
we walk in the lobby and we see another group of black people, and the black people see us, and they're just like, "Hey, black people!"
It's universal.
Tell them who it was.
So
who was the black people we
It
saw?
was Gene Baylor. Y'all remember Zane? The group.
Janae.
Gene Baylor was there for a jazz festival in Bratislava.
And who else?
And
That's Cindy.
my wife was there. I met her. We didn't even have to
Does she
change
know
her
that?
name. Corinne Bailey Ray was there, y'all.
Yes.
And I'm like, you don't even gotta change your name.
Wait a minute. So
Huh?
we were amongst a distinguished cohort, but it means
We
something
lost
when
it.
Gene Baylor and Corinne Bailey Ray give you front row tickets
Free
to their concert and say,
tickets.
please
Please
come.
come.
We need to see y'all.
That's
We need
black
to see
privilege,
y'all.
baby.
That's when we knew
We
we
need to
made
see y'all.
it. That's when we knew we made it.
We made it.
Yeah.
Black
And we
privilege.
took a picture in front. So wait, let me tell you what happened. So we had a tour guide who was, explaining the history and stuff to us, and we're listening and we're present, and then we see all these black people,
And you're like,
and we're like, hold on a second.
Now who is that? Right. Yeah.
They were staying in the same hotel as us, and they were so gracious. And it was a jazz festival going on in Bratislava that had them and a few other black acts come.
Headlining.
Right. And then the other piece was Detroit was in the group. So Gene Baylor's group, one of the girls I went to high school with.
At DAS is in the band.
DSA.
DSA, sorry.
Don't say DAS.
Sorry.
Let's get
Not
it.
of the city,
Detroit
Craig, but the
School of
world.
Art.
The whole world, Craig.
The whole world.
The whole world.
And it was nuts. And so I would just say, number one, our music is all over the world.
That's right.
Specifically Detroit music, I couldn't go anywhere, yo.
Oh, no.
I couldn't go anywhere without hearing Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye.
We
dude
in this
was
little
blasting-
dark hotel bar, that's like green and dark, and they're playing Motown. And
So I want to get ready to peel the black onion a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I would be remiss if I wouldn't give a couple of quick speed points because I want to share a few things. So for me, in Brussels, there was two things that stood out. Was the fact that no matter where you live, so language, right? So you got Dutch and French speaking people, population for the most part. If you lived in a part of the city where somebody that was Dutch that was running for office, but if you spoke French, you couldn't vote for them. That's right. It was like blowing me away. The second thing was when I went out on my own, and at that particular time, there was no GPS, there was no Uber, I didn't have a phone. I was just on my own, ass out, like being honest with you. I went to the hood in Brussels. I didn't know Brussels had a hood. And they talked about the minorities in Brussels, and in America, when they talk about minorities, who they talking about? It's the Turks. So I go to the hood. That's where I learned about this place called The Egg, which gave me the idea for MASH. So that was one thing. Second thing was in Germany, there were a couple of things that happened. One thing that happened in Germany that blew me away, two things that blew me away. So you know how we always talk about repurposing land and reactivating spaces? They took us to this park, kind of the equivalent of a state park that had been reimagined. We at this park, it's families everywhere. We're riding a Segway. And the guy says, oh, let me tell you the history of this park. And he points over to this big airplane hangar. And he says, yeah, you see this hangar here? And we're like, yeah. He was like, yeah, this used to be Hitler's private airport. And we were segwaying down the runway where Hitler used to take off from. And when they surrendered and whatnot, at first the U.S. took it over. And when the U.S. flew into Berlin, that was the airport where they landed. But the biggest thing that happened to me on that trip was we were there when Obama came to speak, and it was the first time an American president had spoke at the Brandenburg Gate, which is basically the line between the wall at Berlin that got tore down. It's also right where the hotel where Michael Jackson hung the baby out the window, right there. First time in decades a U.S. president has spoke there. First time Obama has spoken there. And the last time I think anybody had really done it, we got VIP access. So you see where that woman is in the back with that baby? We were that far away from Obama. And it was a special invitation. We got pictures. And so those type of moments happen. And then the last thing I will say is when we went to Warsaw, Poland, and we took a little side trip to Krakow and whatnot, we went to the Warsaw Uprising Museum and had a chance to really experience probably the greatest and best Holocaust museum. And I'm not saying best from a good perspective, but just interactive. And they took us down into the simulated experience under the bottom of the museum in sewers. And you're under the sewers because that's how people hid from the Germans. And the crazy part about it was the people walking over top of you in the museum were just like footsteps like they were experiencing. And then they took us over to Krakow, and we had a chance to see things around like this gas chamber. And you could see scratches on the wall, and you could see like these piles of hair and shoes. And they showed you like the passports, and not the passports, the books, and how people got tricked. They told them they were taking them away, and they actually took them. And so the point that I'm making is there's still bullet holes over there. There's still a lot of history over there. And honestly, I didn't feel qualified to really talk about those things in a unique way. But when I did find my creases, I realized that my blackness was a strength because I could relate even though it wasn't me. And so my question to you is, what were the moments where you felt, because you were in a lot of rooms and a lot of talking, and by the way, it's 12, 14, 16-hour days, you tired, you getting up at 6, you ain't getting back until 10, then your cohort want to hang and drink.
Ridiculous.
You with the crazy folks, you got the people who don't want to go to bed, you tired.
Crazy.
But there are moments where you are uniquely qualified to either answer a question or say something because you are black. Right. Talk about that a little bit.
Can I tee you up for the Yellow Vest moment? Okay, so I'm gonna tee up Yodit.
I knew this was coming.
We were in Paris, and as Yodit said, we met with the founders of the Yellow Vest movement. A young black woman actually founded the Yellow Vest. And what was not odd, but just almost magical is that the people who were not black sort of yielded their seats around that table to all of the black folks that were on the trip. It was just very natural, like all the folks of color sat at the table to talk to this woman, and this was something that everybody was looking forward to. And we had like this incredible moment, and I want Yodit to describe it in her poetic way because I wouldn't do it justice. But we sat and we learned about the origins of the Yellow Vest movement, the media campaigns against the Yellow Vest movement, and we ended up also having a conversation about self-preservation and self-care in that kind of work. Because homegirl was just like, didn't have time to really take care of herself. And we had this incredible moment that Yodit is going to tell you about.
Wah, wah. I'm going to tell you something else, and then I'll tell you.
Kill it, yo. I knew it.
So it's interesting that the professor in Germany told Orlando what he said about us, because my critique of the program is its failure to recognize the way that dominant culture and white supremacy pervade every culture, everywhere. If any of you went to Ghana for the year of return, many of you talked about your experiences with dealing with folks from Ghana who were bartering and offering and coming at you with, you see capitalism, you see the impact and influence of Western dominance everywhere you go. And so what opened my eyes is that even though the skin was maybe not black of the people who were oppressed in these countries, the oppression was familiar to me. And an example of that, so what I heard from a woman who was a professor in Greece that I would ask you to think about is that this strong leader nostalgia, like we're throwing around these names, Hitler and Marx and, Markel and Stalin and Leopold, and the influence of these patriarchal culture and ideology on whole systems, whole governments, whole countries. It's so pervasive, so much so that when we got to Bratislava, so the Roma people, we know them as gypsies, their academic outcomes for their children, the Roma children, and Roma people originated in eastern India, and they're a nomadic people, and so they migrated into areas of Europe. Their children's academic outcomes are on par with black children here in the US. So when I tell you that the systems of oppression are baked into these colonial nations, right, that we are on the land of the colonizer, that's why it's a problem to me that you take me on a trip across the country and are so tone deaf that you don't realize that you're, bringing me into a traumatic experience. Now you fast forward to, they book in the trip with, when we were in Brussels, we met with the European Network on Racism. And I was so excited that, this was my people. And I had a one-on-one interview with them. And they are doing anti-racism work, but they're at where we were, in the 60s, right? I mean, so very new to the work because Europe is very nationalist. You almost can't, and tribal, you can't really name your racial identity, nor do they identify in that way. So if we think we got issues, there's compounding invisibility of your racial identity because they just organize their societies very differently. So now we book in the trip we're meeting with 3 activists. So and basically my compatriot, an individual consultant who's working with governments and organizations to help them build anti-racist systems. Then there are these 2 folks, an elder gentleman who I think his origins were from Algeria maybe, and then this sister who happened to be a banker in France, gets a Lyft or the Uber equivalent one day, and it's so expensive, and she asked the driver why, and he says, it's the fuel tax. And it makes her curious, and so she starts writing to the government. By the way, Emmanuel Macron is a graduate of the GMF program, and they ooh, and so is Stacey Abrams. I'm I'm gonna just call her up hey, girl.
We in Georgia.
We
you
here.
can.
What you
You
doing?
can.
What you doing?
You actually can.
It's that easy.
But anyway, I don't know about you, but I've been kind of enamored by Macron, right, in France and what he's doing. But the sister tells us that she starts interrogating the government about the fuel tax, and she's asking these questions, and she's getting this pushback. And so she starts a change.org petition, 34-year-old Martinique, culturally Martinique Parisian, 34, that says, why are we paying so much in the fuel tax? And in the course of 7 months, 1.5 million people signed the petition, and suddenly she is propelled into a national and now international movement. And when she gets that attention, others who are feeling marginalized want to join her. So now you have this collision of movements that are what we know as the Yellow Vest movement. It's actually a number of movements that have now come together, and it's messy. It is messy. If you could imagine Black Lives Matter, La Raza, and 5 other movements, suddenly we all, working together, and we don't know each other, don't have trust, don't have camaraderie. So the grandfather, they start passing around these pictures of the 12 people who have died in the protests. And you see that the France government, although it was supposed to simply be crowd control, is shooting, and they have these rubber bullets that they're supposed to only shoot at your body. We're seeing these graphic images of people with, it's just horrible, y'all. And it makes it real. Now it's not just she talking about something that happened over on change.org. It's real, and you see these photos. And so at one point, the elder gentleman, who was a part of another movement that had joined her, and none of them speak English, by the way, so we have a translator for the entire, but suddenly you can feel the energy, the thickness of what they are in the middle of. This isn't, Angela Davis, who I saw on Monday, talking about her work, in the movement. This is last week. they were out on the front lines protesting and being water hosed, and like the things we saw. So it's palpable. And somebody asked, how do you take care of yourself? And they break open. They weep. They weep. And she and he, this grown man, right, is weeping. And when you talk about Black all over the world, we know pain. And the only thing I knew to do was what my mama would have did, and that's, let's sing a gospel song, and let me read you something from Adrienne Marie Brown, baby.
Universal.
And so I text Orlando, sing Amazing Grace, because little do y'all know, he can sing his face off.
This is a church boy right here.
You want to sing a little?
No.
Don't put my man on the spotlight.
But it was such a deep pain that there were no words that could have comforted them, if you know what I mean. You know how when you really hurting deep and somebody's like, oh, it'll be okay, and you want to punch them in the face? They just needed us to be with them. And so this dynamic of how the room had changed was added to how powerful the moment is, where our white allies kind of slowly pull back and we kind of slowly lean in at this table and are comforting, and suddenly the whole room is holding hands, right? And we read just a piece of poetry that Adrienne had pulled from Octavia Butler around grief and around tears and around our collective grief and our collective tears. And it is in that moment that I knew that what I had written for, what I had hoped for, what I had yearned for, which was to have our struggle affirmed, but to know that if you bet on Black women, we gonna make a change. You hear me?
Word.
And that sister was making a change.
Word.
Bet on Black.
So we gotta thank you, Yodit, for that.
And I want to make sure I get my last one in after this.
So take it a little different direction, and who knows, y'all probably can make this deep too. But a little lighter note, Black all over the world. Culturally, we do have a lot of pride if it all works out right in our Blackness. And we have a lot of reasons to feel defined by that. But I know when I went, a lot of the cultural norms of Europe in general reminded me that there's a lot of things that I can relate to just Americanism. And thereby, when I see myself as an American, I realize there's a lot of things that I can just relate to the human experience. When you just start backing up from your definition of yourself, and it's understanding that you're going through a human experience just like a lot of other people, and no matter how far away they are, what context they have in approaching life, their fears are pretty in alignment with our fears. Their ambitions are pretty much in alignment with our ambitions. If they have kids, they pretty much sound like a mom or dad, just like ours do. But there were some very distinct things that I felt was a disadvantage to my Americanism. And one was, I remember walking into school in Germany and was walking up the stairs, and this was supposed to be one of those schools that was for the immigrant kids. But some of the kids was born in Germany. They just wasn't blue-eyed and blonde hair. And there's a lot of pain in that lack of identification in their homeland. Well, the experience that was profound for me was it was a school of a lot of different age groups. And while we were walking up the stairs to the auditorium to speak to this group of students, there was this little girl, no bigger than Shelby, probably younger. And while I was walking up the stairs, she was looking at me. Why is this Black man in my school? And she said something to me. And I was like, and then she said it again, but in a different language. I was like, and then she hit me one more time with a different language and was like, and by the time we got to the stairs, I was just like, I'm sorry. And she was like, American. This little girl. And she already knew that we were of the ignorant cast of people in the world who thought, who walk around like we got it. But it's kids that know 4 or 5 languages. When I got to Portugal, I was there with my buddy Vu from Seattle, and Vu knows Spanish. So Vu was like, be prepared. It's a different type of Spanish in Portugal. So we get in the cab, and I'm like, well, Vu, I'm gonna need you. He's like, yeah, it's kind of the same, so I'll be able to help you out. And the cab driver starts to speak to us in English. And I was like, okay, Vu, I guess I don't need you. And we were both like, well, how did this cab driver? So I asked him, I was like, dude, you speak really good English, dude. I'm like, where did you learn how to speak English? You know what he told me? He's like, I taught myself watching subtitles on American movies. We heard that too. He said, I pick up people from all over the world, China, everywhere. Cab driver at the airport in Portugal. He was like, English is the language everybody understands. How many of us really realize that our language, the English language that we use every day, it weakens us a little bit because we think that's all we need. But in truth, it is the kind of key to communication to people in most of the globe. There's not another language that is universally used as much as the English language. And I thought that was a profound thing. How did your Black experience and things that make you American, really, how did those things make an impact on you while you was there? For me, it was a language thing. Do you remember anything else? Religion was a big one for me too, but.
And we're gonna need the abbreviated because we're gonna get to the Q&A in a second.
I think you did a really good job with that. I would say the things I noticed were more ways in which we were alike. Yeah. That the human experience is a human experience. If we peel back the construct of race, you really see that, families are trying to care for their families the way we are. The city guide in Germany liked French fries just like I do. You know what I mean? Like she keeps after her teenagers the way we do. So I was more keenly aware of our, we do something like that. You know what I mean? And our city guide in Germany, I said, Petra, I think you might be Black.
You got one, and then we go.
I would just say I just recognized how young we are as a nation, and how ignorant we are to a lot of the facts and historical aspects that have happened around events that have happened around the world that we may know but may not know, and it really prompted me to want to do more research, learn more, and listen a whole lot more than I taught.
All right, 2 quick speed questions, and then we're gonna take Q&A. No, I'm gonna do this real quick because we said we was gonna do this. Favorite country, best food, which country?
Oh, Bilbao, Spain.
That was your favorite country?
Yes, and the food was off the hook.
All right, Yodit.
6 courses every meal.
Favorite country, Brussels,
Belgium, okay.
And food in Greece.
Okay, Kirk?
Lisbon.
Favorite country?
The food was Lisbon. My favorite experience was Sarajevo.
Okay.
Going through that whole experience.
For me, favorite country and experience was Berlin. Best food I ever had in my life was in Greece. Oh my God. All right, Q&A. So here's how it's gonna work. You're gonna have to come up here, talk to the mic. I will not relinquish the mic because we need it for the podcast. So if anybody has a question, raise your hand, come up, I'll hold the mic. Anybody, questions? Come on up. Just say your name and ask your question. We're on a timeline.
Good evening. I'm Veronica. Question, did you have any culminating exercises or projects you had to fulfill with regard to that 100-page book?
Good question.
No, the 100-page book was really for us to do a lot of reading and learning. But one of the things that GMF is encouraging us to, GMF German Marshall Fund is encouraging us to do, is to sort of put our heads together to think of a project that would answer some of the things that we saw or across the pond, or to generate some, level of ideas that they will actually fund up to $5,000. And so I talked about that piece earlier around the intention of policy versus how it shows up in community. I've been thinking about how I can package that here in Detroit so that it can get funded. But I think we're still figuring out what kind of projects we may want to apply for funding for.
Yeah, I mean, the one culminating project, you're required to write a blog.
Oh, the blog, yeah.
And we'd be happy to share our blogs with you if you would like to see them. And we also had to complete pretty rigorous evaluations of the program and our experiences after every trip.
Yeah, so the crazy part about the blog was we had to write ours, I think, while we were on the trip, which was crazy. It was pressure packed.
It's so much to unpack. And
yeah.
We are literally just now being able to put words to this experience. This is why we did it now and not in December or November. It's a lot to process. And
it is.
To have to write about it so soon thereafter, it was crazy. Yeah.
Next question. Any other questions?
Yeah, come on up.
Yes. Just say your name and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Deanne. A quick question, but before I get to my question, I just want to say thank you. Representation still matters. Mm-hmm. So as a Black woman, that's important. I'm excited for your journey. And thank you, Orlando, my East Side legend. You always inspire me. Thank you for traveling. But my question is, many of us, we want a seat at the table, but many of us deep down don't believe we deserve a seat at the table. And so did you go in anywhere through the application process or vetting process? Did you have any fears and anxieties going into this journey? Were they squashed, or what did you learn? What were you scared of? Any fears and anxieties, and did you get over them?
Good question.
Yeah, we had this conversation in our prep call, and it's a little longer than just a pat answer, but what I want to tell you is I was aware of the exclusivity of the project, which is part their intention. They want you to feel special. They want you to feel the rigor of being accepted into this international program. And there are elements of it that felt elitist and exclusive that would perpetuate your feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. Like, you got 27 minutes to talk, you know what I mean? Or you better, you gotta have this, this many letters of recommendation and that sort of thing. So I've been very critical of the program's design in that way. And yes, like anything where you're punching up, you have some natural anxiety, some natural fears. And again, I want to credit Marlowe and Kirk and Amanda Edmonds, Naima Wade, like so many people who, Katie helped me just mid-trip where I was like, okay, I'm on the edge. And she was like, listen, many of the alumni of the program, it really is a strong network in that way. And I think we have to sit with that discomfort instead of pushing it back. I find that when I'm most uncomfortable, the greatest amount of growth is happening.
It's fuel.
Yeah, I would say for me, there was something that I always carried. I always carried this tension of being actually young. I'm 30 years old, but looking much younger and having started my career at 22 years old. Maggie DeSantis is here, y'all. I have to acknowledge her. She gave me my first
OG in the
job.
house.
She gave me my first job and really taught me the tricks of the trade. She doesn't know how much I appreciate her for her investment. But one of the things that I carry all the time with me is
I got that same story about Maggie.
Me too.
This apologetic nature that I would have. I felt like I always had to apologize for my youth and qualify myself. I've been doing this a long time. I'm not an overnight success. I'm 8 years now in the game. I know a few things, right? And I would walk into rooms and, make a joke about my age and say, hey, no, I've been doing this, really just qualify myself so that everyone knows that I belong in this room. And now I'm just like, I feel like I don't have to do that. What this experience did for me was transformative in that I belong. I know I belong at any table, in any room that I occupy, because my work ethic, my mentors, everything. Mm-hmm. That's how I got there. And so no more apologies. I ain't saying sorry no more.
Cool. Any other questions? Come on up. What time is it? Because we're going to do a wrap up at the end, and then Kirk's going to ask one.
Oh, okay.
come right here. Hi, I'm Nicole. Really amazing to hear about all of your travels and all that. My question is kind of a follow-up to what you just said, Orlando, in terms of apologizing and feeling like your age is playing a role in terms of kind of the space that you occupy and being in the program. But I think it's really interesting that you said it's 28 to 40 or thereabouts. Okay, so there's a lot of programs, that are directed at college students or new graduates. There's also programs that are directed at people on the other other end of the age spectrum. And you talked about, Yodit, in terms of people leaving, they have more things going on at home, right? You might be figuring out childcare for the month, or your dog, or you have a house, right? What were some of the benefits that you saw in terms of being part of a group that was, this kind of middle range, right? I don't know if it's quite middle-aged, but, it's definitely a different age range than you find for a lot of programs.
Be careful, Gen
she just
Z,
called you,
whatever. No, I'm just playing.
Here was one of my benefits, that everybody tried to be my mama and auntie, and it was hilarious.
It's them brush waves. Don't he look young?
I was being mothered the entire time. But what was cool is also being able to, it was my first time abroad, and some of these folks have been some of everywhere. So having sometimes elders in the room, for lack of a better phrase, to help level set and give some context to some of the things that I was seeing and experiencing for the very first time was very rich, because I ain't been nowhere like that. You know what I mean? So I would say that.
Yeah. So there was diversity of age in the group. I actually thought I might be one of the older in the group, and there were folks there that were older than me, so that was beneficial. Our city coordinators were also more mature. But I think there was benefit in having the age diversity, which is something we can think about as we're designing fellowships. What I had felt like prior to this is I was in this weird space of not being young enough or old enough to be in the kinds of, cranes, 20 in your 20s, 30s in your 30s. I'm like, hell, I just got good in my 40s, hell. And now they stopped giving out the damn awards, or getting into programs. So, I think the bigger context for that is that what I've learned at this point is that leadership is about becoming and unfolding. It is truly a journey. The leader I was at 20 and the leader he is at 30 is different than the leader you'll be at 40 and 50. So
We got time for one more question, then Kirk and I are going to wrap. Sorry for going over a little bit.
Hey, cool.
Hey,
What up, though?
Nice to see everybody. So you all mentioned a little bit about how at times you felt very privileged to be in the rooms that you were in, at the tables you were at, and that it felt exclusive at times. I imagine if you all had to do rigorous evaluations after each country, they also asked for you to evaluate the program as a whole. So I'm curious if you all have any insight about, over time, how this program has worked to make it a program that's more inclusive, that's reaching more folks, maybe in different paths of leadership, and how they're receiving the feedback that it may be exclusive and may not really be reaching as many leaders. Like, how are they planning or not planning to kind of incorporate that?
So I want to credit them that I think GMF is working ACUA to try to attend to, and like a lot of organizations, they're beginning at the representation level, right? And so how can we get more people, Marlowe's the first black man in the program, and our cohort is mostly POC, right? 2013, right? So we're starting to see some of that. I think, as is the case often with the work of creating belonging in cultures, the culture shift takes more time, right? It's easier to get the people in the room, but to shift the culture, to shift the system. So I think that's where the greatest opportunity is, and the blog was the greatest chance to provide that feedback along with the evaluations. And then they have created opportunities where you can actually be a part of their strategy planning. If you wish to. So I would have to give them credit for being an organization that's trying, but I think you and I talk about this a lot. Like, when you are the person that's being marginalized in the process, the trying is never fast enough.
So I would also add that, being a part of that kind of like vanguard year where you just start seeing brothers a part of this, we had some stuff to prove. We had some stuff that we had to basically kind of make sure we held up. So
and we were scared about letting people down, too.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure, just knowing that, you know, you had that first black thing going on.
From Detroit.
Yeah, and then me and Marlowe didn't really get a chance to kick it, you know, in between. So it was just like, go and I'll catch up with you when you get back. I know some of the things that we talked about while I was there around intentionally trying to open up diversity was the age limit, and now we see that they relaxed it, was the fact of bringing in more minorities intentionally. And what we asked for was, okay, so if you now starting to let black people in, where the Latino brothers and sisters at? And I don't even know how well they've been doing that, but that was something that we put some pressure on them about. And then one of the other things that we asked them about was, you know, the places that you're getting, the career paths that you're getting people from. I was from activism at the time and community development. Marlowe was in kind of a similar situation, but there's a lot of business, health, and, you know, specific fields. And I'm like, has GMF ever had an artist? And if you don't have anybody from the art world, how are you really talking about cultural change?
Right.
You know, and I don't even know if they've still been able to actually get that done. So there's still some things that they're having challenges with being able to incorporate with the same themes. But I can't say that they're making an art forever.
Was this is a leadership imperative. You are a global program, and we're in a time where the globe is browning. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a must-do, not a try-do.
But in contrast, one of the things I want y'all to realize, and this is the thing that I always say, is, and this is going to lead to my last question with you two, we also have to recognize that when we go to programs like this and we land in these different countries, they're showing us the reality of these places as is. They don't stage it. They don't cater it for us. You see what they want you to see, and everybody's experience is different. Kirk hated Berlin. I loved it, right? And I saw very, very, very lower level. I went to a lot of NGOs, which is what they call nonprofits. I saw a lot of different things, from high level to low level, to people struggling, talking to a dude who was a former Russian mob boss buying up property on the coast of Montenegro. I mean, we saw it all. But the most important thing to me at the end really was, what did I learn about me? And to be honest with you, I had some bias. I went to the mall in Warsaw, Poland, and I walked in the mall with a chip on my shoulder. I was the only black man in the entire mall. Imagine going to Somerset, and you're the only black person there. And I had a chip on my shoulder. You know why? I expected people to give me nasty looks. I expected people to be mean to me. None of it happened. And so what I realized, that I brought my own bias. It was the first time in my life that I could be, as an adult, where I can be so selfish, unplugged, no phone, no nothing. It was just about me, and I learned so much about myself. And I think the number one question I've been wanting to ask both of y'all, what did you learn about Orlando? What did you learn about Yodit, regardless of the program design, regardless of who you met? What happened to you, and what did you walk away with knowing about yourself?
I would say I learned and started believing what those who wanted nothing but the best for me have been saying to me for years, what Katie Locker had been saying to me for years, what Maggie and Marlowe have been saying to me for years, was that you're enough, you're dope. And I honestly struggle with that. And I began to believe, and I now believe and know, that my specific Detroit experience, my East Side experience, was a value add to the program. It wasn't a loosening of the requirements to let me in. I brung value because of who I am, right? And so I learned to believe everything that Maggie and Katie been telling me for years. I'm enough. I'm dope. I got it. And I learned that about that was what I learned about myself. And it was and still is very powerful for me to walk with that confidence. You can't tell me nothing.
I'm proud of you too, baby. Yodit, my sister from another mister.
That's a deep question. What did the truth is?
Hold the mic up, son.
What did I learn about myself? I think it was validating. It wasn't like a new learning, but more of a validating of, challenge ask questions, go deeper, lean towards love, right? I made meaningful relationships with people who were very different from me, and I'm better for it. I don't want a world that now suddenly is, where there was white dominance, now there's black dominance. I want a world where we're all free, where we all get set free, right? And so what I learned about myself is I could trust that instinct. It feels innate as a woman, as a black woman. Like, I've never wanted my freedom to be at the expense of someone else's. I want to be an agent of change that is working towards liberatory practices and justice and love and liberation for all of us. And so when I was there, those connections that I made my work feel, extended, expanded, opened up, and affirmed. So it wasn't like a new learning, it was more of a validation. And I'm really so grateful, in spite of my critiques of the program, so grateful to have been chosen and have the opportunity to go.
So, Marlowe, thank you for your last comment, because for me, you actually took me back to the appropriate space for the end of this. And it goes back to the conversation we had at the cafe in Brightmoor years ago, before I went on the trip. There was a part of that conversation that I was explaining a psychological context that I was walking around with about my inferiority complex. And as I was explaining to you, we both started crying. Do you remember the story? So let me tell y'all a story, a very real story. And it pertains exactly to what we're talking about as far as being not only black around the world, but having an image of yourself that unlocks your ability to be you all the way and to create a chance for you to get your mobility to go out here and take this world for what God actually planned for you. So the story that I told Yodit, and consequently, after I told her that story and before we broke from that meeting, she said to me, I want you to meet a brother that I know that's been pulling together a group of people. And she essentially introduced me to Marlowe. After this conversation is when she actually was inspired to actually and introduce me to Marlowe, and ever since that day, we've been best friends. So let me tell you about how this all relates, right, to this whole idea of you feeling like you're powerful. But let me tell you about it in the context of the professional oppressors of our world, but not in a slavery context or anything like this, a very real animal training context. So, have you ever been to a zoo or someplace where an elephant is held captive? Do you know how they're able to keep that elephant so docile and tame while they're in there? Well, there's an old story that they tell about what they do to a baby elephant when it's born. They put chains around that baby elephant's legs that are so heavy that if the baby elephant chooses to try to move and work against those chains, that the grip around their foot is so heavy and it's so tight that it hurts. It hurts the elephant so much that they don't even want to test it. And it's an embedded memory that actually gets ingrained into the elephant's psyche, so much so that when the elephant becomes a full-grown, unmanageable, unmovable beast, you can tie a string around his foot and it's not gonna move. So I know that the work that I was doing when I went to the Marshall Memorial Fellowship, by the record, was something that's worthy of greatness, but I felt the same insecurity when I stepped in that room. And I came out of them rooms and I came out of those places realizing that I was a full-grown elephant and this string is not tough enough to hold me back. And I got home though, and I can tell you, doors open for me, but I still have a string on my ankle. It's longer than it used to be. I know how to go to the places I want to go, but there are times that I still need my brothers, my sisters, my people around me, people that I don't even know, to validate then I'm an elephant. So my last word for you is this. As you are realizing your value, your power, your strength, embrace your story. Embrace the story you have that you've been given, the story that makes all of us collectively who we are, because it's not something to be ashamed of. It literally is the grit, the components of what makes you great. And the reason why you have any doubts that it's something else is because somebody lied to you and tricked you and made you think that you were less so that you wouldn't try and turn this thing into something that it really should be. It's your future. Go hold it. Go make something happen with it. And these incredible leaders right here can definitely probably tell you what you need to do in order to get to that next place.
So if y'all want to connect with Yodit or Orlando after this, they are here, they're around. And I'm sure they'll talk to you more about the fellowship. I can't remember the website at the moment, but I will tell you this, the nominations open every year. It's a rigorous process. If it's something that you're interested in and you think you can do it, I strongly recommend you apply. You have to get permission from your employer. You have to make sure you have some spending cash for you. So there are some requirements, and I know we went through it really quickly, but more importantly, just keep in mind that any one of you equally have the ability, the right, and the skill set to stand up here just like we did. We just were lucky enough to get picked when we did. We hope it's you next. Thanks. A part two?